I've been working on my next super comfy con floor cosplay, Ellen Ripley from Aliens, and I think it's time to start working on the next part of this costume, which is Ripley's shirt, the ammunition harness, and the bandolier. There is a laundry list of things I need to do to get this part of the cosplay done, and as far as I can tell, the tasks kind of fall into 3 buckets. The first is going to be to pattern the harness and the bandolier. That way I can dial in the fit before I cut and assemble everything. And then the second bucket is to build somewhere between 20 and 30 prop M40 grenades, which is going to take some time and probably a little bit of ingenuity. And then third, I'm going to need to weather everything so that it tells the story of Ellen Ripley making it this far into the movie. So here's my plan of attack. I'm going to start with the M40 grenades, the props, because I have to make a lot of them. It's going to take some time, and ultimately I need those little prop grenades to pattern the harness and the bandolier. So I think I'm going to 3D model them, print them, prep them, and then try to mold and cast a whole bunch of copies. We'll see how that turns out. Then I can pattern the ammunitions harness and the bandolier and make that. And finally, I'm going to weather everything all together. That way it can tell a story, I can use a couple of different techniques, and it will hopefully, fingers crossed, look cohesive. Oh, internet, we're friends, right? You know me now well enough to know that I have some goals for this leg of the journey. The first is I want to be tidy. And what I mean by that is that building something sloppy isn't the same as adding battle damage and weathering to show what has happened to your character in their cosplay. So I want to build something well, and then I want to continue to build on the journey through the techniques, the weathering techniques that I add to it. My second goal is a personal goal. It's one that I am often working on, and that is to complete a task to the best of my ability and then move on with my life. I'm working on breaking the cycle of perseverating on perfection, because perfection doesn't exist. And then my third goal is to weather that. I want to use multiple materials. I want to use multiple effects and techniques. I want people to look at this piece and say, something interesting happened to this character. I feel like every time I touch 3D modeling software, I get a little bit better at it, and I've got a supervisor here to make sure that I'm doing all the things right. But I think I have the prop M40 grenade modeled and just about ready to hit the actual robot that does the making, the printing. So it's 3 parts. There's a cap, a shell, and a primer. And I modeled it with the revolve feature. So I ended up sketching the outside of it and then revolving the shape around it. And I also added a recess into it. That way there's an option for maybe some special effects with the props. I think it could be really cool. I imagine a clicker button that might fit in there. It doesn't do anything, but wouldn't that be neat? Like, wouldn't that be a fun effect that you don't expect? So this is ready to hit the print bed, and we're gonna let the robots do the next thing. So my 3D printer just finished printing. It took about an hour and a half, and I'm so happy with the print. I don't think I need to go back and do any revisions. I've got the shell printed. There's still a couple of support structures that I need to clean out. And then the cap turned out pretty good. It fits right onto that. And finally, there's a little tiny primer that fits into this. It doesn't quite fit because there's some elephant footing that happened with my printer, but that will get cleaned up once I sand everything. I even have this push button that I think will fit. Ah! Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I can't believe it worked. Oh, that's so cool. I know it's just a little like dinky effect, but gosh, that's satisfying. So I can mold and cast a couple of these so that they can have actual like working buttons inside of them. So for molding and casting, generally you want to have your buck in as good a shape as possible so that when you're molding it, you're getting like the pristine piece, and then you're casting really, really clean copies. And I'm gonna do that mostly. I'm gonna cheat just a little bit. I'm gonna clean up this 3D print and really do a good job sanding it, cleaning all the support structures off of it. I'll probably sand it up to 400 or 600 grit, and then that's what I'm going to mold. Partly because I expect to have some cleanup afterwards anyways. And also I've noticed there's a point between like finishing, like what you can finish on a singular prop and what you can cast. There's kind of a disconnect in the amount of time you spend finishing and what you can actually achieve. So all that to say, I think it's time to get started sanding on this and we can start to mold it. As far as I can tell, mold making and casting is as much of an art as it is a science. And some of the best advice that I've ever heard is that no matter what you do, it's going to be an uphill climb learning how to use the thing that you made. Here's where we're at. I've taken the M40 grenade prop buck and I've put it into a mold box and I've clayed it up to create a 2-part mold. I also glued the cap into a separate mold box so that I can do a single pour mold. I'm going to be using Mold Max 14NV. I've used it in the past. I really like it, mostly because it doesn't require any vacuum degassing and it's really easy to measure out, mix, and pour. And we're gonna pour the first side, we're gonna flip it, we're gonna pour the second side, and hopefully we'll have a silicone mold that will help us make 20 to 30 identical copies of this tiny little prop. I just finished the pour, the first silicone pour, and you can see it's kind of a messy process. So I am probably gonna call it a night and let this cure. The good thing about the mess is you just let it cure and then you can peel it up because silicone only sticks to silicone. I believe this has a either a 4 or 6 hour cure time. So I think that's probably what I'm gonna get done for the day. We're kind of like losing the light, and this is a really good natural stopping point. I'm really happy with that pour. It's officially set. I went ahead and poured the second side, and I also had to do a little bit of rearranging to get my second mold for the cap for this M40 prop grenade. But now it's time to debox the mold, and then I have some smooth cast onyx. This is a urethane resin. It's 2 parts. You mix them together, you pour them, and in like 20 minutes it cures to a solid. So I plan on using this with some air fillers that I also have in my stock to start making the 20 to 30 grenades that we need to have to be able to fill out the ammunitions harness and bandolier. But before I get ahead of myself, step 1, we need to unbox and demold the buck. Oh my gosh, so I just tried to do my first pour for this mold. There's the prop M40 grenade mold, there's the mold for the cap. Remember, 2-part mold, pour-in mold. Those are air balloons. They lighten the resin, and then I'm using smooth cast onyx fast. And as you can tell, there's all the resin cured in the pot because it totally failed. I feel like such a fraud talking about all this molding and casting stuff, and it just didn't work. But this is where I'm gonna think about what I have learned, that every mold is unique and you have to just learn how it works. So I learned that these 2 tiny pour spouts are not gonna be enough if I want to add air balloons to lighten my resin. So I can either try again with just the resin itself and pour it in and see if that's a little bit better, or I think my next try actually is to make my pour spouts a little bit bigger. I can just cut them with an X-Acto knife and do some final cleanup on the pieces, because it's worth it to me for them to be really small and light, and I have to do a little bit more sanding than I had originally planned. But oh, oy vey, it was a resounding failure, and we're gonna try it again once that resin finishes curing enough for me to strip it out of the molds. I thought I'd be able to mold and cast today. I did the molding, I can't do the casting, but I have a solution in the works, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll be able to keep going. In the meantime, I'm going to start patterning the ammunitions harness and the bandolier using paper and tape, because that's what I have on hand. And fortunately, I printed a couple of extra grenades, prop grenades, so I think I can use those to accomplish what I need to as far as the patterning goes. And then once I have the pattern, I can start cutting out all the different polypropylene webbings to make the harness and the bandolier. So let's do the thing. Okay, welcome back to my guest bathroom. This is the only place I have a mirror. I did some paper patterning last night, and for the ammunitions harness and the bandolier, and I like the way it's turning out so far. I think it fits really well. I wanted to try it on with the full, like the pants and the shirt that desperately needs some weathering, because checking the fit is going to be really important. But as far as is like what I think paper can accomplish here. I think I'm in a pretty good spot. I even have the couple of the 3D printed M40 prop grenades in there just to make sure everything fits and kind of stays. But I think we're ready for the next step, which is going to be to cut all these out of the actual material and assemble it while I wait for my supplies for these guys to get in. It's very pokey. There's a lot of pins. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. I think I'm pretty happy with the fit of it. So close. I'm back. It's been a couple of days and quite a bit of couch surfing because I was also battling the flu, but it gave me some time to think, and that was really, really helpful as I was problem solving, molding and casting the M40 prop grenades. Here's the mold that we made. It was awesome. It's a 2-part mold. That's the mold for the cap, and then you open it up and it looks weird inside, but this is the cavity for the actual prop grenades. And I decided that I had been asking too much of this mold. I was just hoping for too much, and I needed to be a little more realistic about my goals with molding and casting. You know, it's a cool skill, but it is just another skill that you can add to your toolbox, and it's not a solution to everything, which is where I kind of I get caught up in the hype of it. Like, it's gonna solve all my problems, but it doesn't. It's just another skill. You're still gonna have to do work. So I decided it wasn't going to be a good idea to walk around with a bunch of props that could potentially have caps popping off and losing all these parts and pieces. And rather, I should have a couple of those. But the majority of the props should be solid state, should be one solid piece. So I did a thing. I made a second mold, and you can tell because it's pink and yellow and very happy, and that made me happy when I had the flu. This is a 2-part mold for a solid M40 grenade. And when I open it up, you can see inside, it's just one solid piece. And between all the couch surfing and the recovering and trying to just breathe through my nose again, I also managed to cast a couple of prop grenades. So I was aiming for 20 to 30. I have 30 right here. I'm pretty happy. There's quite a few. I had to do a little bit of cleanup on these. They didn't come out of the mold perfect. There was some flashing on the sides. There were air bubbles that needed filling. So these have all already been sanded and filled and cleaned, and they are ready for the next step, which is to be primed and painted. Hey. Okay, so we're out in the garage. It's actually pretty cold where I'm at in this part of the country. So we're not gonna stay out too long. I'm using some primer and I'm gonna just apply a layer onto this because I wanna make sure that my paint sticks. So the can has been heating up for a while. I'm gonna move pretty quickly once I get everything shaken, and then we'll move on to painting.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe how long it has taken me to get to this point where we finally have some painted M40 prop grenades. It's been days of painting. And admittedly, I love the painting process, but wowza, I did not anticipate the amount of work it was going to require. I'm getting ready to just put a clear coat over the top of all of these just to protect the base paint, and then that will give me a nice canvas to do some really gnarly weathering.
I feel like you can tell it's getting a little bit late in the day just because the ripple of chaos that has extended beyond what's on screen. Like in this corner, there's a bunch of sanding happening, and over in this corner, there's a bunch of casting happening, and down below, there's a bunch of painting happening. Like it just slowly ripples out from wherever I'm at as the day goes on. But here we are, ready for the next part of this cosplay, which is to tell a story with this bright white t-shirt. Everything gets dark when I hold it up, so I'm gonna keep it down on the table in front of me. It's just the t-shirt that Ripley wears by the time we see her fighting the Queen Xenomorph at the end of the movie. And it needs to tell a story of the journey that she's been on. So we know weathering is a goal. We know weathering is a challenge for me. I have a plan of attack. First, I'm gonna do an overall hot water tea bath dye to take the bright whiteness down a couple of notches. Then I'm gonna use some coffee strategically to stain around the collar and the armpits and along the hemline, just to tell the story of somebody living and sweating in this garment. Third, I'm gonna use some acrylic and maybe some, looking over here, maybe some water-based oil paints to do some splatter effects, because Ripley has been through some things. She's gonna have some blood splatter on her. She's gonna have some oil and grease splatter. And I think just a toothbrush and some watered down paint can help me achieve that. And then fourth, finally, for some cohesiveness, I'd like to take this shirt out to the airbrushing part of my garage and just add some darkness along all the seams to match the pants. So there's a laundry list of things to do. I think we should do the thing. All right, friends, I've been doing some thinking and some research, and I rewatched the movie, and I don't think I'm gonna weather these M40 prop grenades. And here's the reason why. In the movie, Ellen Ripley takes these grenades directly from the factory issued packaging and puts them right into her ammunitions harness in Bandolier. Even though it's a pretty grimy and industrialized world, I just don't think that these would be gross. I think that'd be really bad practice to let your grenades get corroded and rusty and dirty. I feel like you would actually spend a lot of time making sure they're quite cleanly packed and really well like stuffed inside their boxes so they're not going to get jostled. So aside from the fact that weathering gives me the cold sweats, I actually think if I want to be movie accurate with this cosplay, these are better left in the state that they're in. Which means the last thing I need to do is add the clicker buttons into some of these empty canisters, and then I think we'll be ready for the final reveal. It's done. It's finally done. This was a journey. You know, for just being a t-shirt, ammunitions harness, bandolier, and a couple of fabricated elements, this took a while. And that's on me. I did not anticipate how long it would take to cast 34 prop M40 grenades. It took a while. And it took a while to clean them up, and it took a while to paint them. But I'm glad it's done. I'm excited. I feel like I'm getting one step closer to being able to wear this really cool cosplay, and that is helping me hold my enthusiasm to get this done. I want to take a moment to reflect on my goals and think about how I did. You know, my first goal was to be tidy. I think I did okay here. I paused at the shirt because it's weathered and it looks gross, but it is clean and everything is well constructed. It's engineered to be easy to get on and off. It fits really well. It's comfortable to wear. So as far as like being tidy, I think I did the best I could within what it was that I was building. So I'm gonna say 4.5 out of 5 Danny Beans. I think I did a pretty good job with that. Goal number 2 was to move on, to not perseverate. And I don't think I did so good here. I struggled. I struggle with fabricating props and wanting them to be perfect. So I get stuck in a cycle of like sanding and cleaning and painting and sanding and cleaning and painting, and it's hard to move forward. And I definitely got stuck with the prop grenades doing that. And then I also really worried about, was I over weathering the shirt? So it's something I'm still growing on. I know that about myself. I struggle with it every time, but I think I am getting better. I'm gonna give myself 2.5 out of 5 Danny Beans on this. I think I did okay. There's room for growth, but it wasn't a total fail. And then finally, the third goal, which was to weather that. Yeah, ditto, done. I don't know why weathering is so hard for me, but I'm getting better at it. I do think the shirt might be a little bit over weathered. I hope it tells a story when I wear it of a character who has been through a lot of challenges and fought monsters and is just generally a badass lady. And so that's what I'm going to try to hold on to when I think about, did I overweather this? So 3.5 out of 5 Danny Beans. I think I did okay there. I think I'm growing, and I think I'm definitely making progress forward. I'm really excited to keep working on this project, so stick around to see what I do next. Thanks for hanging out today, and we'll see you next time.